A millionaire has an accident. A recycling collector helps him. This changes his life. Before we start, comment below which city you are watching from. Enjoy the story. It was raining heavily that night. The streets were filled with water. Alice was pulling her recycling cart, trying to get home before the storm got worse. A millionaire has an accident. A recycling collector saves him. This changes his life. Before we start, comment below which city you are watching from. Enjoy the story. It was pouring rain that night. The city streets were flooded. Alice was pulling her recycling cart, trying to get home before the storm got worse. Her 5-year-old daughter, Luna, was waiting for her. She was hungry and sleepy in their small apartment in the suburbs. As she turned the corner, Alice heard the screech of tires and a big crash. Her heart raced as she ran towards the sound. At the intersection, a luxury car was crushed against a pole. The engine was still running. There was no sign of movement inside the vehicle. Without thinking twice, Alice left her cart and ran to the car. The driver's window was cracked. A man was unconscious behind the wheel. The smell of leaking fuel made Alice more panicky. She tried to open the car door. It was stuck. With all her strength, she managed to force it open. It was difficult. "Sir, can you hear me?" she shouted. Her voice was breathless as she tried to wake him up. The man, Victor, opened his eyes briefly. His vision was blurry. He saw Alice's face, illuminated by the flickering streetlight. Before he could say anything, he passed out again. Alice managed to release him from the seatbelt and, with effort, dragged him out of the car. She had barely moved him a few meters away when a small explosion rocked the vehicle. Frightened but relieved to be safe, she watched as the lights from ambulances and police cars came closer. Paramedics arrived quickly and put Victor on a stretcher. Alice left before the police could ask her any questions. She was wet, tired. Her hands were shaking. She didn't want to be late getting home. When she entered her small apartment, she found Luna asleep on the couch, hugging her teddy bear. Alice sighed, changed her clothes, knelt beside her daughter, stroking her hair. "Everything will get better, Luna. I promise." Far away at the hospital, Victor was taken to the emergency room. As the medical team worked to stabilize him, a thought crossed his mind before he passed out. He needed to find the woman who had saved his life. Morning light streamed through the hospital windows as Victor slowly woke up. His eyes opened. He had difficulty adjusting to the bright light in the room. A throbbing pain in his head reminded him of the accident. He tried to sit up. He felt weak and decided to stay still. A few minutes later, the room door opened. It was Lucas, his faithful assistant. Always efficient. Lucas had a relieved expression upon seeing. His boss woke him up. "Thank God you're awake, Mr. Victor. How are you feeling?" he asked. Approaching the bed, Victor gestured with his hand, indicating that he was well enough to speak. Even so, his voice came out hoarse and low. "I'm alive. That's something," he replied with a weak smile. "What exactly happened?" Lucas asked. Lucas explained the accident and how Victor was found by a woman who pulled him out of the car before it exploded. "She saved my life," Victor said. "Who is she?" Lucas asked urgently. Unfortunately, no one got detailed information. She left before the police could talk to her. Reports indicate a young woman, probably humble, with a recycling cart she left behind, was there. Victor frowned, feeling grateful and curious. He closed his eyes, trying to remember the face he saw that night. It was a vague image. Something in her eyes seemed etched in his memory. Lucas, I need to find her. I want to thank her personally. Use whatever resources are necessary. Lucas hesitated for a moment. Of course. Sir. But do you think she wants to be found? That doesn't matter. Victor replied with determination. She saved my life. It's not a debt I can ignore. As Victor rested, Lucas put the company's contacts and resources to work. It took only a few days for him to learn the basics about Alice. A hard-working woman and single mother. She supports her daughter, Luna, by collecting recyclable materials. The information moved Lucas. When he reported the details to Victor, he saw the real impact it had on his boss. She has a daughter, Victor murmured thoughtfully. I'll hire her. It doesn't matter what position or what it takes. I want to help her without her knowing it's because of me. Lucas raised an eyebrow. Intrigued. What if she says no? Someone like her might get. Something about the suddenness made Victor smile, showing a mix of cunning and sincerity. You're creative. Find a way to make the offer irresistible. Make sure she doesn't know I'm behind it. Across town, Alice was starting her day with the same goal as always, making sure Luna had food on the table. Dressed in simple, comfortable clothes, she organized the recyclables she had collected the day before. Despite the challenges, her determination never wavered. As she dropped Luna off at the small community daycare, Alice barely had time to process the unexpected approach of a man dressed in business attire said he worked for a major company. Alice Marrera. He introduced himself with a formal smile. My name is Renato. I work in human resources at Corporativa Bravati. We're growing our team and saw your profile in one of our community training programs. We'd like to invite you for an interview. Alice frowned. Confused. Training. I think you're mistaken. I've never been part of anything like that. Renato kept smiling, hiding his unease. It must be an old record. Regardless. I work in human resources at Corporativa Bravati. We're growing our team and found your profile in one of our community training programs. We'd like to invite you for an interview. Alice looked confused. Training? I think you're mistaken. I've never been part of anything like that. Renato kept smiling, hiding his unease. It's yours if you're interested. It involves simple administrative tasks. No prior experience required. We provide training, along with benefits like health insurance and childcare support. Alice's eyes widened. It seemed too good to be true. Even so, she hesitated, unsure about stepping so far out of her comfort zone. I don't know. I've never worked in an office before. Sensing her doubt, Renato gently pressed on. Think about your daughter's future, Miss Marrera. This could be an opportunity to change everything. Those words struck a chord. Alice looked at Luna, playing with other children in the daycare playground. Felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe it was time to take a chance. All right. I'll accept. She finally replied, but only because it seems like something that could help my daughter. Renato nodded, satisfied. Excellent. You'll start next Monday. All the details and instructions will be sent to your address. Alice returned home, feeling a mix of anxiety and relief. As she thought about the new opportunity, she had no idea that her new job was directly connected to the man she had saved that rainy night at the hospital. Victor, something that could help my daughter. Renato nodded, satisfied. Excellent. You'll start next Monday. All the details and instructions will be sent to your address. Alice returned home feeling a mix of anxiety and relief. As she thought about the new opportunity, she had no idea that her new job was directly connected to the man she had saved that rainy night. At the hospital, Victor listened with interest as Lucas gave updates. Learning that Alice had accepted the offer brought a rare smile to his face. He wondered how her life would unfold from now on and silently vowed to repay her for what she had done for him. Lucas, meanwhile, couldn't help but notice the change in his boss. Victor's gratitude seemed to have deepened into something more profound. Still, he listened intently as Lucas shared the latest updates. He felt a rare smile spread across his face when he learned that Alice had accepted the offer. He thought about how her life would change from then on and promised silently to repay her for what she had done for him. Lucas, on the other hand, couldn't help but notice the change in his boss. Victor's gratitude seemed to have deepened into something more profound. Still, he remained professional. Now, sir, what's the next step? Victor looked out the window at the city's skyline, reflecting his determination. Let things progress naturally. She deserves a chance to grow without feeling like she's being watched. I want regular updates on how she's doing. And, of course, keep everything confidential. As the sun set, a new journey began for both Alice and Victor. Two lives that had crossed paths by chance were now destined to intertwine even more. On a sunny Monday morning, Alice adjusted the simple dress she had chosen for her first day of work. Her heart raced as she looked at her reflection in the small, worn mirror. She wasn't used to formal clothes or the environment she was about to step into. Something inside her insisted on Lucas listen to the updates. He was happy to hear that Alice had accepted the offer. He thought about how her life would change from now on. He promised to repay her for what she had done for him. Lucas noticed a change in his boss. Victor seemed more grateful than before. He thought that this could be the start of a new chapter for her and Luna. After dropping her daughter off at daycare, Alice went to the company's address. She held a small bag with her documents and a notebook for notes. When she arrived in front of the big Corporativa Bravati building, she stopped for a moment. She looked at the shiny glass, the tall height of the building. Lucas listened attentively as his boss gave updates. He felt a rare smile on his face when he learned that Alice had accepted the offer. He wondered how her life would change from now on and silently promised to repay her for what she had done for him. Meanwhile, Lucas couldn't help but notice the change in his boss. Victor's gratitude seemed to have deepened into something more profound. Still, dressed people going in and out made her feel out of place. You can do this, Alice, she murmured to herself before stepping inside. Walking through the revolving doors, she was greeted by a luxurious and bustling environment. The marble floor gleamed under the shoes of executives. The receptionists looked impeccable in their suits. Nervously, she approached the front desk. Good morning. My name is Alice Moreira. I have a scheduled meeting. The receptionist smiled and typed quickly on the computer. Ah. Yes. Miss Moreira. Mr. Renato is expecting. You are on the 5th floor. Use the elevator on your right. Alice thanked him and stepped into the elevator. Watching the numbers rise on the illuminated panel. Each floor seemed to bring her closer to something unknown and intimidating. When the doors opened on the 5th floor, Renato was already waiting for her. Miss Moreira. Welcome to our team. He greeted her enthusiastically. Renato led Alice down a corridor to a training room. There, she was introduced to the other new employees and given basic instructions about her role. Lucas listened attentively as his boss gave updates. He was happy to hear that Alice had accepted the offer. He wondered how her life would change from now on. He promised himself that he would repay her for what she had done for him. Lucas, meanwhile, couldn't help but notice the change in his boss. Victor's gratitude seemed to have deepened into something more profound. First, it seemed simple. Organizing documents. Scanning files. Providing administrative support to a small department. Despite her lack of experience, Alice listened attentively to the explanations and asked questions whenever necessary. Determined to do her best, she continued to learn. Let's play a game with those who only read the comments. Type "cupcake" in the comments. Only those who get this far will understand. Now, let's continue with the story. While Alice was learning the first steps of her new routine, Victor was watching everything from a distance. Lucas kept Victor updated on Alice's progress, sharing subtle details that made him smile. It looks like she's doing well. There's no doubt she's dedicated, Lucas said as he handed over the reports. Victor read the notes with interest. Knowing that Alice was finding her place there filled him with satisfaction. Also brought a strange unease. He wanted to see her in person to observe how she was adapting. He knew it was too risky at that moment. Let her continue at this pace. I don't want to interfere, Victor replied. Although he felt conflicted, Alice started to feel more at ease in her new job. The work was repetitive. She did it well. What's more, her salary was enough to buy Luna better food and new clothes. For the first time in years, Alice didn't have to worry about saving money before going to the market. One afternoon, while looking at a stack of documents, Alice was approached by a colleague. Although she was distracted, Alice started to feel more comfortable in her new job. The work was repetitive. She did it well. The salary was enough to buy Luna better food and new clothes. The first time in years, Alice didn't have to worry about spending money carefully. One afternoon, while looking at some documents, a coworker named Mariana sat down next to her. Hi, Alice. I'm Mariana. I noticed you're new here, she said, smiling. Yes. I just started. I'm still trying to get used to everything, Alice replied. Don't worry. Most of us started out the same way. It gets easier with time. If you need help, feel free to ask me, Mariana offered. The interaction made Alice feel more at ease. She started to make small friendships at work, which made the days less lonely and helped her feel part of something bigger. However, she still had no idea that the company's owner was while Victor was recovering from his accident. Lucas helped him get better. Now, Victor is about to leave the hospital. He is walking with a cane to help him stand up straight. He looks better. He still has scars from the accident. I'm finally free from here, Victor said. After weeks of recovery, Victor was about to leave the hospital. He walked with a cane to help him stand up straight. Although he was much better, He still had scars from the accident. Finally free from the hospital. Victor took a deep breath as he walked out the main door. "Now it's time to get back to work," Lucas said. Nodding. He noticed that Victor was looking a little distant. He knew his boss was eager to see Alice again. Even if he wouldn't admit it. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" Lucas asked. Helping him into. He breathed in deeply as he left the hospital. "Now it's time to get back to work." Lucas nodded. He noticed that Victor was looking at him strangely. He knew his boss was eager to see Alice again. Even if he wouldn't admit it. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" Lucas asked as he helped him into the car. Victor just smiled. "There's a lot of work to be done. Something tells me it's the right time." At the office. Alice continued to focus on her tasks. Unaware that Victor's return was about to change the course of things. After weeks of silence. The elevator and the main building opened. Victor entered the company's lobby. The employees, surprised by his presence, greeted him respectfully as he headed to his floor. Alice, who was returning from a short break, didn't expect to meet anyone at that moment. As she turned the corner, her attention was captured by a figure she instantly recognized. She recognized him. He was standing in the lobby. Neatly dressed. Looking a little tired. Her heart was beating quickly. It was the man she had pulled from the car on the night of the accident. Now he was here. In a place she never thought he would be. How was this possible? She stood there. Unable to move. Watching him get in the elevator and disappear behind the doors. A moment. Alice felt like the ground was disappearing from under her feet. She started to ask herself questions. None of them had an answer. All she knew was that the man she had saved that night was somehow part of the world where she now worked. She spent the rest of the day trying to focus on her work. She couldn't stop thinking about Victor. She could still remember the man she had pulled from the car that rainy night. Now he was here. In the same building. It seemed like he was in charge of everything. The coincidences were hard to ignore. She didn't want to make any quick decisions. As she typed, a storm of thoughts swirled in her head. Why is he here? Could he really be the man I saved? More importantly, does he recognize me? Shaking her head, Alice tried to push away the confusion. There was work to do. She needed to stay focused. In the office upstairs, Victor couldn't stop thinking about Alice. From the moment he saw her in the hallway, he felt a mix of surprise and relief. She was doing well. Making progress. Just as he had hoped. Yet Victor knew he couldn't rush things. There was a delicate balance between his gratitude and the potential impact of revealing the truth to her. "Lucas," he called. Flipping through a report. "Make sure she doesn't find out." "Not yet." Lucas hesitated before replying, "Of course. Sir. But if I may ask, how long do you plan to keep this a secret?" Victor leaned back in his chair, letting out a sigh. A sigh. Not much longer. She deserves to hear it at the right time. In a way that makes sense to her. Until then, I just want to watch and make sure she has everything she needs. Lucas nodded. Though his doubt was clear. He knew Victor was walking a fine line. One mistake could complicate everything. The next day, Alice arrived at work ready to find out the truth. During lunch, she pulled Mariana aside and asked, pretending to be calm. "Hey. Do you know who the boss here is?" she asked. Trying to sound casual. Mariana's eyes widened in surprise. You don't know, she said. It's Victor Lasharda. He owns Corporativa Bravati and there are several other companies. They say he almost died in a car accident a few weeks ago. I think he returned to the office yesterday. Why did Alice feel a chill run down her spine? The confirmation brought back all the questions she had been trying to ignore. It was him. Why hadn't she known this before? Even more puzzling. How would she end up at this company without realizing who was behind it? Oh. Just curious, she replied quickly, masking her nervousness. He seems important. Mariana laughed. Important is an understatement. They say he's one of the wealthiest men in the country and very private. 2. Almost no one gets to speak with him directly. Alice smiled politely. She was confused. Back at her desk, she decided to look more deeply into the situation. In the archives, she found documents outlining the company's structure and recent projects. Carefully flipping through the pages, she found an internal memo mentioning her hiring. The note was clear: her recruitment had been approved directly by the president. Alice froze. Why would the company's owner get involved in hiring someone like her, with no qualifications or experience? Later that day, Alice saw Victor again. He was leaving a meeting with other executives. When they looked at each other, he stopped for a moment, as if thinking about whether to say something. Instead, Victor just nodded politely and kept going down the hall. Alice felt like she needed to know something. She needed to know it now. At the end of the day, she decided to talk to Lucas, who was always around. Finding him in the hallway, Alice went up to him directly. Lucas, I need to talk to you. He looked surprised. Nodded. Of course. Alice. What's on your mind? She took a deep breath before continuing. Why was I hired at this company? Don't get me wrong. It doesn't make sense. I had no experience. This opportunity came out of nowhere. Lucas hesitated, confirming Alice's suspicions. He knew something. Alice. He began. Then stopped, choosing his words carefully. You were hired because your potential stood out. My potential? Alice raised an eyebrow. Skeptical. That's not an answer. Lucas. Was it Victor who approved my hiring? Why? Lucas glanced around. Ensuring. They were alone. He knew he was going against Victor's orders. He couldn't avoid the truth any longer. Yes. It was him. Not for the reason you're thinking. Victor learned about your story after the accident. Alice took a step back, as if she'd been struck. He knew who I was all along. He knew I saved him. Lucas nodded slowly. He didn't want you to know. His intention was never to make you feel indebted. He just wanted to give back somehow. Alice felt tears welling up in her eyes. She held them back firmly. The mix of emotions, she felt many emotions, including surprise, anger, gratitude, confusion. She wasn't sure if she should feel betrayed or touched by the gesture. I need to talk to him, she said, her voice steady. Now. Lucas hesitated again. I'm not sure if that's a good idea, he said. Lucas. Please. I deserve an explanation. Reluctantly. He agreed. All right. I'll let him know you want to talk. Please take it easy. He never meant any harm. Alice nodded. She was still very confused. The only thing she knew was that she needed to confront Victor and understand what all of this meant. Alice walked down the hallway toward Victor's office. Her heart was beating quickly. She had many questions in her mind. Every step seemed to echo in the silence of the floor. Was she doubting herself? Did he really have good intentions? Was this just another way for a rich person to feel superior by helping a poor person? Before knocking on the door, she paused, took a deep breath, tried to organize her thoughts. Lucas, who was with her, gave one last warning, remember. Alice, I don't want you to get in trouble. Be fair. Alice. She nodded before knocking twice on the door. Victor's deep voice sounded from the other side. Come in, he said. She pushed the door open slowly. There he was, sitting behind a very neat desk. He looked surprised and cautious, his eyes fixed on her, immediately recognizing that something important was about to happen. Alice, he said, standing up. To what do I owe this visit? She asked. She closed the door behind her, crossed her arms, looked directly at him. She decided not to waste time with small talk. Why am I here, Victor? She asked, her voice firm. He tilted his head, intrigued. What do you mean? You work here, don't you? You know what I'm talking about, she replied, stepping forward. I know you approved my hiring. I know you knew who I was from the start. I want to know why. Victor sighed and leaned against the desk, crossing his arms. A moment. He seemed to ponder how to explain everything. Finally, he began to speak. You're right, Alice. I knew who you were. After the accident, I asked Lucas to find out who had saved me. When I learned it was you, I, a working woman and single mother, was supporting her daughter while working as a collector. She felt she owed you. You saved her life. She couldn't ignore that. So, you hired her. Why didn't you tell me this from the beginning? She asked, feeling frustrated and curious. Because I didn't want you to think it was charity. He replied sincerely. I didn't want you to feel embarrassed or inferior. I wanted you to have a real chance to change your life on your own merits. Alice didn't say anything for a few seconds, thinking about what he said. She wanted to believe him. She still felt uncomfortable because everything had been planned without her knowledge. I'm not a charity case, Victor. I fought my whole life to get everything I have. I didn't need someone rich deciding to save me. Victor stepped forward, his gaze intense. I never wanted to treat you that way, Alice. That's not true. What I saw in you that night. I saw someone strong. Someone who risked their own life to save a stranger. That's not something common. To be honest, I think I'm the one who should be thankful. His words surprised her. The sincerity in his voice was almost palpable. It disarmed her. She looked away for a moment. Trying what I saw in you that night. I saw someone strong. Someone who risked their own life to save a stranger. That's not something common. To be honest, I think I'm the one who should be thankful. His words caught her by surprise. The sincerity in his voice was almost palpable. It disarmed her. She looked away for a moment, trying to control the emotions that were starting to overflow. I just don't know what to think about all this, she finally admitted. Victor approached, Now just a few steps away. Then give me a chance to prove my intentions are good. I'm not trying to change who you are, Alice. I just want you to see that you deserve all the good. I just don't know what to think about all this. She finally admitted. Victor approached me. Now he's just a few steps away. Then give me a chance to prove my intentions are good. I'm not trying to change who you are, Alice. I just want you to see that you deserve all the good things happening in your life. Alice took a deep breath. She was still confused. Something inside her made her relax. Maybe he was telling the truth. Maybe his intentions were genuinely good. I need time to process all this, she said finally. Victor nodded. Of course. Take all the time you need. Please know that I never meant to hurt you. She left the room without saying another word, leaving Victor alone with his thoughts that he knew he had taken a big risk by telling the truth. He also believed it was necessary. There was something about Alice that made him want to be a better person. He didn't want to lose the chance to prove it in the days that followed. Alice. He left the room without saying anything, leaving Victor alone. He knew he had taken a big risk by telling the truth. He also thought it was important. There was something about Alice that made him want to be a better person. He didn't want to lose the chance to prove it. In the days that followed, Alice started to see Victor differently. He wasn't the cold, distant boss she had initially imagined. During meetings and interactions in the office, she noticed how he treated everyone with respect without being arrogant. This realization made her begin to reconsider her first impressions. One day, as she typed documents she started to see Victor differently. He wasn't the cold, distant boss she had initially imagined. During meetings and interactions in the office, she noticed how he treated everyone with respect without arrogance. This realization made her reconsider her first impressions. One day, as she typed documents at her desk, Victor passed by and paused for a moment. Alice, could I speak with you for a moment? He asked. His tone was more casual than usual. She hesitated, nodded. Of course. They walked to an empty conference room, where he closed the door before speaking. I know I asked you for time. There's something I want to show you. She started to see Victor differently. He wasn't the cold, distant boss she had initially imagined. During meetings and interactions in the office, she noticed how he treated everyone with respect without arrogance. This realization made her begin to reconsider her first impressions. One day, as she typed documents at work, Victor reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box, handing it to Alice. Confused, she opened it and found a simple yet worn metal box with the words, "Courage" and "Sacrifice" engraved on it. What is this? She asked, looking up at him. It belonged to my father, Victor explained. She started to see Victor differently. He wasn't the cold, distant boss she had initially imagined. During meetings and interactions in the office, she noticed how he treated everyone with respect without arrogance. This realization made her reconsider her first impressions. One day, as she typed documents at work, his voice heavy with emotion. He was a firefighter. He spent his life saving others. Died during a rescue when she was a kid. In some ways, she thought she had always looked for that kind of courage in the people around her. When you showed up that night and risked your life for her, it reminded her of him. That's why she feels so connected. She started to see Victor differently. He wasn't the cold, distant boss she had initially imagined. During meetings and interactions in the office, she noticed how he treated everyone with respect without arrogance. This realization made her reconsider her first impressions. One day, as she typed documents to you, Alice was silent. She felt empathy for Victor. For the first time, she saw him as a human being carrying his own emotional burdens and scars. The metal in her hand felt heavier than its actual weight. "I didn't know," she finally said. "Because I've never told anyone." He replied with a sad smile. "But I thought you." She deserved to know. The moment was interrupted by a call on Victor's phone that he apologized and stepped out to answer it. Leaving Alice alone in the room, she looked again at the metal. Feeling an unexpected connection to his story, maybe she thought Victor wasn't just a wealthy man trying to make amends. Someone who truly understood what it meant to sacrifice for others. Alice returned to her desk with the metal still in her hand. Victor's gesture lingered in her mind. Vivid and unexpected that in her entire life. No one had ever truly recognized her efforts beyond Luna. Now here was a man like Victor. Not only acknowledging what she had done, revealing she started to see Victor differently. He wasn't the cold, distant boss she had initially imagined. During meetings and interactions in the office, she noticed how he treated everyone with respect without arrogance. This made her reconsider her first impressions. One day, as she typed documents, she thought about her vulnerable side and how it deeply moved her. As she organized some documents, thoughts of Luna filled her mind. She thought about her little girl, smiling and playing blissfully, unaware of the complexities surrounding her mother's life. That was a good thing. Alice woke up every day for Luna, faced the unknown, kept pushing forward. Perhaps she started to see Victor differently. He wasn't the cold, distant boss she had initially imagined. During meetings and interactions in the office, she noticed how he treated everyone with respect without arrogance. This realization made her reconsider her first impressions. One day, as she typed documents at the office, she realized that this new chapter at the company was a chance to give Luna a future that Alice herself never had. Days passed. Alice began to feel more at ease with the idea of working there, especially after her conversation with Victor. He seemed genuine. And although there was still a fine line between gratitude and discomfort, something else was starting to emerge: curiosity. Who was Victor beyond his wealth and power? Why did he seem to care so much about her and Luna? That curiosity grew as Victor started appearing more often on the floor where Alice worked. Although he maintained a professional demeanor, their exchanged glances and brief encounters felt loaded. She started to see Victor differently. He wasn't the cold, distant boss she had initially imagined. During meetings and interactions in the office, she noticed how he treated everyone with respect without arrogance. This realization made her begin to reconsider her first impressions. One day, as she typed documents, she felt a warm smile and a voice at her desk. "Alice. How are you settling in?" he asked, leaning slightly to keep their conversation discreet. She looked up, caught off guard, answered honestly, "I think I'm doing well. I still feel a little out of place. I'm learning." Victor nodded and said, "You're doing an excellent job. If you need anything at all, my door is always open." Alice thanked him with a shy smile. As he walked away, she realized that his presence made the office feel lighter and less intimidating. Over the weekend, Alice took Luna to the park. It was one of those She was happy to have a rare moment to relax and enjoy her daughter's company. Luna, full of energy, ran from one end of the park to the other, climbing slides and picking flowers from the grass. While watching Luna, Alice was surprised by Victor, who was walking through the park with a coffee in hand. He looked more relaxed without his rare moments when she could relax and simply enjoy her daughter's company. Luna, full of energy, ran from one end of the park to the other, climbing slides and picking flowers from the grass. While watching Luna, Alice was surprised by Victor, who was walking through the park with a coffee in hand. He looked more relaxed without his usual suit and tie. When he saw her, he smiled and approached Alice. "What a coincidence to see you here," he said, pointing to Luna, who was running towards them. "And this must be the famous Luna." Luna stopped beside her mother, curious about the stranger. Alice smiled a bit embarrassed. Introduced them. "Luna, this is Mr. Victor. He's my..." He wore a suit and tie. When he saw her, he smiled and approached her. "What a coincidence to see you here," he said, pointing to Luna, who was running towards them. "And this must be the famous Luna." Luna stopped beside her mother, curious about the stranger. Alice smiled a bit embarrassed but introduced them. "Luna, this is Mr. Victor. He's my boss." Victor knelt down to be at the girl's level and extended his hand in a friendly manner. "Hello, Luna. It's a pleasure to meet you." The little girl shook his hand with a shy smile. Her eyes sparkled with curiosity. "Do you like ice cream?" she asked unexpectedly. Victor laughed. "I love it." "You?" Luna nodded enthusiastically. "My mom, the boss." Victor got down on one knee, putting himself at the same height as the girl. He held out his hand and said in a friendly way, "Hello, Luna. It's nice to meet you." The little girl shook his hand with a shy smile. Her eyes showed how curious she was. "Do you like ice cream?" she asked, surprising Victor. "I love it." "You?" Victor replied, laughing. "My mom promises to buy me some when I behave." Alice gave a nervous laugh. Victor seemed genuinely charmed. He stood up and looked at Alice. "Can I join you? I think a walk would do me good," he said. Alice hesitated, eventually agreed. The three of them spent the next hour walking through the park, chatting about easy topics, laughing. Alice was nervous. She accepted his offer to buy her some things if she behaved. Victor seemed genuinely charmed. He stood up and looked at Alice. "Can I join you? I think a walk would do me good," he said. Alice hesitated, eventually agreed. The three of them spent the next hour walking through the park, chatting about light topics, laughing at Luna's antics. Alice. It was a strange yet comforting moment. The first time she saw Victor outside of work, he seemed normal and human. The following week, Victor found an excuse to talk to Alice more often. He invited her to join a small internal project, which meant they would spend more time together. Though Alice was cautious. She accepted the offer because she thought it could help her grow at the company during the meetings. Victor treated her with respect and asked for her opinions. Alice realized that Victor was interested in her for more than just helping. He really believed in her. This made her want to work even harder. It made her feel more confident. She began to grow. One day, while they were reviewing a report together, Victor said something that surprised Alice. You know, Alice, sometimes I think about what would have happened if you hadn't been at that corner that night. That it's strange to think about how one decision of yours completely changed my life." She paused for a moment. Alice. It was a strange yet comforting moment. The first time she saw Victor outside of work, he seemed normal and human. The following week, Victor found an excuse to talk to Alice more often. He invited her to join a small internal project, which meant they would spend more time together. Though Alice was a moment looking at him. I guess fate has a funny way of connecting people, doesn't it? She said somewhat awkwardly. Victor smiled. Yes. It does. And honestly, I'm grateful for it. Alice looked away, feeling her face flush. There was something in his voice and the way he looked at her that made her feel unsettled. She had never experienced. Luna's behavior was strange. It made Alice feel good. This was the first time she saw Victor outside of work. He seemed normal and human. The following week, Victor found an excuse to talk to Alice more often. He invited her to join a small internal project, which meant they would spend more time together. Though Alice was. This kind of attention from someone like him was new for her. What Alice didn't know was that Victor was also struggling with his own feelings. At first, he just wanted to repay what she had done for him. Over time, he began to admire her strength, her determination, and, above all, her dedication as a mother. He knew he was. Luna's behavior was strange. Alice found it comforting. This was the first time she saw Victor outside of work. He seemed normal and human. The following week, Victor found an excuse to talk to Alice more often. He invited her to join a small internal project, which meant they would spend more time together. Though Alice was crossing the line between gratitude and something more, he couldn't help it. One night, while reflecting on the past few months, Victor confided in Lucas, "I can't ignore this. Alice is different. She's unlike anyone I've ever met." Lucas, always the cautious advisor, looked at him with a worried expression. "Just be careful, sir. Feelings can complicate things." Victor sighed. "That I know. It's too late to turn back." The next morning, Victor found Luna at the daycare where Alice dropped her off daily. He had gone there on purpose, determined to understand Alice's world better. When she saw him, Luna greeted him cheerfully. "Damar. Victor. My mom says you're nice." That he laughed, kneeling down to talk to her. "Your mom is an amazing woman. You're very lucky to have her." Luna smiled and hugged her teddy bear. "She always tells me I'm the most important thing in her life." Victor felt a lump in his throat. Suddenly he understood why Alice was so strong. She didn't live just for herself. Everything she did was for others. Luna. This made him admire her even more. As time went on, Alice noticed that Victor was becoming more present in her life. Whether at work or outside of it, he seemed to find ways to be around. Gradually, the initial discomfort was replaced by something more complicated. She admired his kindness and how Luna's behavior was strange. Mariana felt a bit better. It was the first time she had seen Victor outside of work. He seemed normal and human. The following week, Victor found an excuse to talk to Alice more often. He invited her to join a small internal project, which meant they would spend more time together. Though Alice was. She seemed to understand her struggles. She feared that this closeness might create expectations she didn't know if she could meet. One morning, while organizing her desk, Mariana approached with a curious smile. "Alice, you and the boss seem to be getting pretty close lately." She spoke casually. Alice paused for a moment, trying not. Luna's actions were strange. Alice felt a sense of comfort. It was the first time she saw Victor outside of work. He seemed normal and human. The following week, Victor found an excuse to talk to Alice more often. He invited her to join a small internal project, which meant they would spend more time together. Though Alice was to show the discomfort she felt with the observation, she replied, "It's not like that. He's just helping me with the project we're working on. That's all." She turned back to organize the papers. Mariana stayed quiet. Her expression showed she wasn't fully convinced. "If you say so. Honestly, I think he likes you. If it's true." Who? For Alice, it was a strange yet comforting moment. For the first time, she saw Victor outside of work. He seemed normal and human. The following week, Victor found an excuse to talk to Alice more often. He invited her to join a small internal project, which meant they would spend more time together. Though Alice was. Could she blame him? "You're amazing," Alice laughed nervously. Mariana's words lingered in her mind. Did Victor like her? The possibility made her uneasy. She brushed the thought aside and focused on her responsibilities. Later that day, Alice was called into Victor's office to review the project's progress. He was seated at his desk. He was looking over some reports when she walked in. He greeted her with a warm smile. "Alice, I'm glad you're here. Please have a seat," he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. She sat down with a straight posture and her eyes focused on the documents in front of her. During the meeting, Victor paid attention, complimenting her ideas, and he was looking over some reports when she walked in. He greeted her with a warm smile. "Alice, I'm glad you're here. Please have a seat." He gestured to the chair across from him. She sat down, her posture straight, her eyes focused on the documents in front of her. During the meeting, Victor was attentive, complimenting her ideas, offering suggestions. At one point, he shifted the focus from work. "Alice, can I ask you something?" he said, his tone becoming more personal. She looked at him, surprised. "Sure. How do you do it?" he asked, leaning forward slightly. "Work so hard. Take care of Luna. Still find the strength to keep going every day." The question caught Alice off guard. She was taken aback by the directness of the question. No one had ever shown a real interest in understanding her struggles. "That I don't have much of a choice. Victor, when you're a mom, everything you do is for your child. Luna is my strength. My reason to keep moving forward," she answered. Trying to keep the emotion out of her voice, Victor nodded, visibly moved by her response. "That's." Alice felt surprised and a little scared. No one had ever really cared about her problems. "I don't have much of a choice. Victor. When you're a mom, everything you do is for your child. Luna is my strength. My reason to keep moving forward. She's my strength. My reason to keep moving forward," Alice answered, trying to keep her voice from shaking. Victor nodded, visibly moved by her response. That's something I deeply admire about you, Alice. Your courage and determination are truly inspiring. Alice looked away, feeling exposed. Why was he saying these things? And why did it make her heart race? In the days that followed, Alice tried to put some distance between herself and Victor, fearing that their growing closeness might cause problems. But avoiding Victor turned out to be harder than she expected. He always seemed to find a way to start a conversation. Whether it was in the hallway, during lunch, at the end of the day. Despite this, something inside her felt uneasy. There was a part of her story that Alice had never shared. Not even with Victor, the past. Problems, but avoiding Victor turned out to be harder than she expected. He always seemed to find a way to start a conversation. Whether it was in the hallway, during lunch, at the end of the day. Despite this, something inside her felt uneasy. There was a part of her story that Alice had never shared. Not even with Victor. The past with Luna's father was a painful chapter. She preferred to leave that chapter buried. Now, with these confusing emotions surfacing, she worried that this secret could become a barrier between them. As days went by, Alice began to feel the weight of the connection forming between her and Victor. Let's play a little game with those who only read the comments. Type chocolate in the comments. Only those who've read this far will understand. Now, back to the story. One Friday afternoon, as Alice returned from lunch, Mariana appeared again. This time her comment carried a sharper tone. You know, Alice, people are starting to talk. This special attention Victor gives you. It doesn't seem. Mariana was very professional. You have a mischievous smile, Mariana said. Alice stopped, surprised by the remark. People who spread rumors know how it is. Some think you're taking advantage of the situation. After all, he's never shown this much interest in anyone before. Mariana added. Alice felt a wave of nerves. She knew Victor hadn't done anything. Problems. Avoiding Victor turned out to be harder than she expected. He always seemed to find a way to start a conversation. Whether it was in the hallway, during lunch, at the end of the day. Despite this, something inside her felt uneasy. There was a part of her story that Alice had never shared. Not even with Victor. The past was inappropriate. Mariana's words stirred a fear she'd been trying to ignore, what others thought about her. At the end of the day, Alice decided to avoid Victor. Instead of taking the elevator as usual, she used the stairs. When she reached the ground floor, she ran into Lucas, who seemed to be waiting for her. Alice. Victor asked me, problems. Avoiding Victor turned out to be harder than she expected. He always seemed to find a way to start a conversation. Whether it was in the hallway, during lunch, at the end of the day. Despite this, something inside her felt uneasy. There was a part of her story that Alice had never shared. Not even with Victor. The past. To call you. He wants to talk about the project. She hesitated, feeling a tension she couldn't explain. Tell him I'll talk to him on Monday. I'm late to pick up Luna. Lucas frowned but didn't push the matter. He could tell something was wrong. That evening, Alice was at home preparing dinner while Luna, full of energy, began drawing at the kitchen table. On the paper, Luna scribbled something that caught Alice's attention, a picture of 3 people holding hands. Who's this? Alice asked, pointing to the third figure beside them. Luna smiled innocently. It's Mr. Victor. He always smiles at us. I think he likes you. Mommy. Alice froze for a moment, staring at the drawing. Alice was surprised to see Victor so early. She was shocked. Then she felt happy. Alice. This is a surprise. How can I help you? I need to talk about something important. What is it? I need to talk about something important. She sat in front of him, crossing her arms. I need to talk about something important. 2. I need to talk about my story. I need to talk about you. What are you talking about? I need to talk about my story. I need to talk about you. What are you talking about? I need to talk about my story. I need to talk about you. What are you talking about? I need to talk about my story. I need to talk about you. What are you talking about? I need to talk about my story. I need to talk about you. What are you talking about? I need to talk about my story. I need to talk about you. What are you talking about? I need to talk about my story. I need to talk about you. What are you talking about? I need to talk about my story. I need to talk about you. What are you talking about? I need to talk about my story. I need to talk about you. What are you talking about? I need to talk about my story. I need to talk about you. What are you talking about? I need to talk about my story. I need to talk about you. What are you talking about? I need to talk about my story. I need to talk about you. What are you talking about? I need to talk about my story. I need to talk about you. What are you talking about? I need to talk about my story. I need to talk about you. What are you talking about? I need to talk about my story. I need to talk about you. She was having problems. She was avoiding Victor. It was hard. He was always talking to her. She felt uneasy. She had a secret. She went to his office. She knocked and he said, "Come in." Victor was surprised to see her there so early. He was happy. He said, "Alice. This is a surprise. How can I help you?" Alice sat in front of him, crossing her arms. She said, "I need to talk about something important. That's starting to bother me." He frowned, looking confused. "Of course. Go ahead." She took a deep breath before continuing. "People are talking about us. They're saying you're the reason I'm here. They're saying I'm only here because of your protection." Victor was silent for a moment, clearly processing what she had just said. "That's starting to bother me. Problems." But avoiding Victor turned out to be harder than she expected. He always seemed to find a way to start a conversation. Whether it was in the hallway, during lunch, at the end of the day. Despite this, something inside her felt uneasy. There was a part of her story that Alice had never shared. Not even with Victor. The past hurt. Finally, he spoke in a firm tone. "Alice. Who's saying this?" he asked. "It doesn't matter who. The point is, if these things are being said, it means something is wrong." She replied, trying to control her tone. "And, to be honest, I'm starting to think that maybe I let things get out of hand." Victor shook his head, visibly upset. "Alice. That's ridiculous. The fact that I value your work or respect you shouldn't be a reason for gossip. These people are wrong. I won't tolerate this kind of behavior in my company. But it is happening. Victor. I need to think about what's best for me and my daughter. Victor leaned forward. His eyes fixed on her. Alice? If you're saying you should distance yourself because of what others are saying, I need you to think again. You earned your place here. What others say doesn't matter. Alice looked away, feeling confused. She wanted to believe him. She couldn't. If you're suggesting I should distance myself because of what others are saying, I need to ask you to reconsider. I earned my place here. What others say doesn't matter. Alice looked away, confused. She could see something in his voice and the intensity of his gaze that made her want to believe him. She knew the world wasn't always fair and that rumors could easily turn into something more destructive. I just don't want my presence here to harm you or affect my life outside of work, she finally said. Victor leaned back in his chair, taking a deep breath. I understand, Alice. I want you to know that you have my support. Always. I'll deal with it. I know the world isn't always fair. Rumors can be harmful. I don't want my presence here to hurt you or my life outside of work. Finally, Victor leaned back in his chair and took a deep breath. I understand, Alice. I want you to know that you have my support. I'll deal with these rumors and make sure nothing affects your position here. She nodded. Uncertainty still existed in the air. Over the following days, Victor took steps to stop the rumors. He called Mariana and other employees for a private meeting, making it clear that gossip would not be tolerated in the company. Despite this, Alice, the rumors made her feel uneasy. She worried that the rumors would affect her position at work. Victor tried to stop the rumors. He called a meeting with Mariana and other employees. He said that gossiping was not allowed in the company. Alice still felt worried about the rumors. One night, while putting Luna to bed, Alice thought about everything that had happened. Victor always seemed to be on her side. Was that really what she wanted? He had become an important part of her life. She was still worried about how this closeness would affect her. Even after everything that had happened, Alice couldn't stop thinking about the words she had heard. One night, while putting Luna to bed, she thought about everything that had happened. Victor always seemed to be on her side. Was that really what she wanted? He had become an important figure in her life. She was still worried about how this closeness affected her. Victor, on the other hand, was equally restless. He knew the situation had upset Alice. It frustrated him. He couldn't understand how something as genuine as his admiration for her could be turned into something so negative by others. Was he pushing too hard? The days passed slowly for Alice. Although Victor had tried to contain the rumors, the other hand was also restless. He knew the situation had upset Alice. It frustrated him. He couldn't understand how something as genuine as his admiration for her could be turned into something so negative by others. Was he pushing too hard? The days passed slowly for Alice. Although Victor had tried to contain the rumors, she still felt the looks and whispers in the office. Deep down, she knew the issue wasn't just about the gossip. There was something bigger that bothered her, the invisible barrier her own past had created. The secret she carried. That night, while finishing the dishes, Alice paused to watch Luna, who was sleeping soundly on the couch. The other hand was also restless. He knew the situation had upset Alice. He was upset too. He couldn't understand how something as genuine as his admiration for her could be turned into something so negative by others. Was he pushing too hard? The days passed slowly for Alice. Although Victor had tried to contain the rumors, daughter was everything to her. She was also the reason for her cautious choices and her resistance to letting others get too close. Alice knew she couldn't ignore the signs that Victor wanted more than just to help her. There was something he still didn't know about her. Something that could change everything. The next morning, the other hand was also restless. He knew the situation had upset Alice. He was upset too. He couldn't understand how something as genuine as his admiration for her could be turned into something so negative by others. Was he pushing too hard? The days passed slowly for Alice. Although Victor had tried to contain the rumors, Alice decided she needed to get away from the tension at the office. She took a day off and took Luna to visit a nearby park where she used to go before starting to work at Victor's company. The place had a special meaning. It was where Alice had made some of the hardest decisions of her life. While Luna played on the swings, Alice, the other hand, was also restless. He knew the situation had upset Alice. He was upset too. He couldn't understand how something as genuine as his admiration for her could be turned into something so negative by others. Was he pushing too hard? The days passed slowly for Alice. Although Victor had tried to contain the rumors. One day, Victor sat on a bench, lost in thought. He felt Alice's absence at work. He had gotten used to seeing her every day and hearing her voice. Now he felt something was wrong. He tried to focus on his responsibilities. He couldn't stop feeling restless. Finally, he decided to call Lucas and ask, "Where is Alice?" The other hand was also restless. He knew the situation had upset Alice. He was upset too. He couldn't understand how something as genuine as his admiration for her could be turned into something so negative by others. Was he pushing too hard? The days passed slowly for Alice. Although Victor had tried to contain the rumors. Without preamble, "I want to make sure she's okay." Lucas hesitated for a moment but followed the order. A few hours later, Victor had his answer. Alice was at the park with Luna. Without thinking twice, he left the office and drove straight there. When he arrived, he parked the car and saw Alice sitting alone on a bench. She seemed distracted. The other hand was also restless. He knew the situation had upset Alice. He was upset too. He couldn't understand how something as genuine as his admiration for her could be turned into something so negative by others. Was he pushing too hard? The days passed slowly for Alice. Although Victor had tried to contain the rumors, he watched Luna play. For a moment, Victor hesitated. Was he invading her space? Finally, he approached carefully, trying not to startle her. Alice noticed his presence before he said anything. When she turned, her face showed surprise. Also exhaustion. "Victor, what are you doing here?" she asked, trying to hide the tension in her voice. The other hand was also restless. He knew the situation had upset Alice. It frustrated him. He couldn't understand how something as genuine as his admiration for her could be turned into something so negative by others. Was he pushing too hard? The days passed slowly for Alice. Although Victor had tried to contain the rumors. "I'm worried. You didn't show up at work. I wanted to make sure you were okay," he answered sincerely. Alice sighed, looking away. "I just needed some time. There's a lot going on. I wanted to clear my mind." Victor sat next to her, keeping a respectful distance but fixing his gaze on her. "Alice, if there's anything I can do to help." The other hand was also restless. He knew the situation had upset Alice. He was upset too. He couldn't understand how something as genuine as his admiration for her could be turned into something so negative by others. Was he pushing too hard? The days passed slowly for Alice. Although Victor had tried to contain the rumors. "You know I'm here," she laughed. Without humor. "That's what scares me. Victor. You're always there. Wanting to help. Trying to fix everything. But life isn't always that simple," he frowned. Puzzled. "What do you mean by that?" Alice stayed silent for a few moments before finally deciding to speak. "There are things about me you don't know." The other hand was also restless. He knew the situation had upset Alice. He was upset too. He couldn't understand how something as genuine as his admiration for her could be turned into something so negative by others. Was he pushing too hard? The days passed slowly for Alice. Although Victor had tried to contain the rumors. "Things I've kept in the past because it's just easier that way." Victor leaned in slightly. Intrigued. "Alice, whatever it is. You don't have to carry it alone. I want to understand." She looked at him. Seeing the sincerity in his eyes. Finally. She took a deep breath and began to share. "Luna's father wasn't the man I thought he'd be. When I, the other hand, was also restless." He knew the situation had upset Alice. It frustrated him. He couldn't understand how something as genuine as his admiration for her could be turned into something so negative by others. Was he pushing too hard? The days passed slowly for Alice. Although Victor had tried to contain the rumors. "He found out I was pregnant. He disappeared. Saying he didn't want a family because it would ruin his life. So I had to move forward alone. Pregnant. I couldn't find a job. I had no choice. I collected recyclables to sell just to afford a place to live and put food on the table for Luna. It wasn't easy. Victor. I built a life for her, and the other hand was also restless." He knew the situation had upset Alice. He was upset too. He couldn't understand how something as genuine as his admiration for her could be turned into something so negative by others. Was he pushing too hard? The days passed slowly for Alice. Although Victor had tried to contain the rumors. Victor's chest tightened as he absorbed her words. He could see the pain in Alice's eyes and the strength she had to summon to get through it all. Now he understood why she was so protective and cautious. "I'm so sorry. Alice. I can't imagine how hard that must have been for you. If I can say one thing. I think you did the right thing. You gave Luna a home and love. That's worth more than anything." Alice felt tears well up in her eyes. She held them back. She didn't want to appear vulnerable. Even though she longed to let go. "That's why I can't afford to make mistakes. Victor. Everything I do is for her. I can't risk something or someone disrupting our you gave Luna a home. Love. That's worth more than anything." Alice felt tears well up in her eyes. She held them back. She didn't want to appear vulnerable. Even though part of her longed to let go. "That's why I can't afford to make mistakes. Victor. Everything I do is for her. I can't risk something or someone disrupting our lives." Victor nodded. Understanding. "I get it. Alice. I want you to know I'm not here to disrupt anything. I'm here because I admire you. I believe in you. Because. Well. I think you and Luna are much more special than you realize." Alice looked away. Feeling her heart race. It was hard to hear those words. Something in his tone made her believe him. "I understand." Victor, Alice said. Nodding. I know you're not here to disrupt anything. I admire you and believe in you. I think you and Luna are special. Alice looked away, feeling her heart race. It was hard to hear those words. Something in his voice made them seem true. Luna ran over to them, holding a flower she had picked. Look. Mommy. This is for you, she said. Alice. Smile and take the flower, Victor said. Thank you. My love, Alice said. You like my mom. Don't you? Luna asked directly. Alice's eyes widened. Victor laughed and knelt to talk to Luna. I like your mom a lot, he said. Luna ran over to them, holding a flower she had picked. Look. Mommy. This is for you, she said. Alice. Thank you, she said. My love, she said. Luna. You like my mommy. Don't you? Alice's eyes widened at her daughter's direct question. Victor. I like your mom a lot, Luna said. Luna. She's an amazing person, Alice said. Alice. I'm blushing, she said. I'm not sure of what to say, she said. Before she could respond, Luna grabbed her hand and pulled her to join the play. Victor watched them, feeling a strange sense of peace. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. He was ready to fight for the space he was beginning to occupy in their lives. The weekend before, Alice had gone out with Victor. She was unsure about how to respond. But before she could, Luna grabbed her hand and pulled her into the conversation. Victor felt a strange sense of peace. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. He was ready to fight for the space he was beginning to occupy in their lives. The days following the conversation in the park brought a subtle change for Alice. While she was still hesitant to let Victor in, she felt something different about him. He didn't make empty promises or try to push her into anything. Instead, his actions spoke for themselves. He was present but always respected the boundaries she set at work. At work, Victor seemed more distant and public, maintaining professionalism to avoid further gossip. Yet Alice noticed the small gestures. He always found a discreet way to ask about Luna or offer help with challenging projects. These short but meaningful moments planted a seed of doubt in Alice. Could he really be different from the other men who Victor decided to do something special for Luna one weekend? Even though he had let her down before. He called Alice, who he rarely called outside of work. Asked if he could take Luna out for a little outing. Alice hesitated when she answered. Victor. You know I don't usually let Luna go out with anyone but me. I understand. I don't want her to feel like I'm forcing anything. You don't have to feel pressured. Think of it as a way of thanking you for welcoming me into your life. Even if it's just a little bit. You can come with us if you'd like. Alice thought for a few seconds about the offer. Finally, she agreed. With one condition, if Luna wants to go, I'll go with her. I don't want her to feel like I'm forcing anything. Victor agreed. The next day, the three of them met at a city theme park. Luna was thrilled to see the attractions. Her excitement made Alice happy, too. For the first time in a long time, she relaxed and enjoyed the moment. During the outing, Victor showed a side of himself that Alice had not seen before. He laughed openly, helped Luna choose her rides, even tried to convince her to go on a roller coaster. When Luna got tired, the three of them sat under a tree and shared an ice cream. She has your strength, Victor remarked, looking at Luna. You can see it in her eyes. You've done an incredible job. Alice. Alice blushed at the compliment. Do what I can. Sometimes I feel it's not enough. Luna doesn't seem to mind. She just wants me around. That's what matters. She knows you love her more than anything. Victor said this with admiration in his voice. A moment. Alice's eyes met his. She felt a warmth in her chest. It wasn't just what he said. How he said it. She understood what it meant to fight for someone and put someone else before herself. The next day. At work. Alice found a small surprise on her desk, a plant in a decorated pot with a card that read, "To remind you that the strongest things grow in the most unlikely places." It was from Victor. She held the pot in her hands. She smiled. Mariana saw her in the hallway and teased. Looks like someone has an admirer. Alice laughed. Something inside her began to change. Maybe Victor really was different. Maybe he was. She deserved a chance. Later that week, Alice decided to return the favor. She spent the night making homemade cookies with Luna. The next day, she brought a small box to Victor's office. When she walked in, he looked up. Surprised. "This is for you," she said, placing the box on his desk. "Luna and I made them. You'll like them," she insisted. Victor opened the box and smiled at the pretty cookies. He picked one up and took a bite. Looking happy. "Perfect. Thank you, Alice. And tell Luna she has talent." Alice laughed, feeling relaxed for the first time. There was no tension or discomfort between them, just a simple, sincere moment. The two of them kept getting closer over the weeks. Victor started inviting Alice and Luna to small activities, like family lunches or visits to the zoo. Luna, with her infectious energy, seemed to love Victor's presence. Alice couldn't deny that he was starting to play an important role in their lives. Despite this, Alice was still afraid. She was afraid to open her heart and be disappointed again. She was afraid that Victor didn't fully understand what it meant to be with her and Luna. One night, while putting her daughter to bed, Alice reflected on how much her life had changed in the past few months. She wanted to believe that Victor was different. What if he wasn't? The following weekend, Victor organized an event at the company to celebrate the success of a recent project. He made sure to invite Alice and Luna, insisting it would be an opportunity to celebrate together. At the event, Alice was impressed with the organization and the way Victor seemed to command everything. He came to her during the evening and offered her a glass of juice. "Are you enjoying yourself?" he asked, smiling. "Everything is amazing," she replied. "You really know how to impress people." "The only person I want to impress is right here," he said, looking directly at her. Alice felt her face warm. Before she could respond, Luna appeared, holding Victor's hand and pulling him to dance. Victor, laughing, followed Luna to the dance floor, where he began to dance exaggeratedly to make her laugh. Alice watched from a distance, feeling a mix of joy and fear. He seemed so genuine. There was still something inside her that resisted. That night, after the event, Victor walked Alice and Luna to their car. Before saying goodbye, he turned to Alice and said in a serious voice, "Alice, I know you have doubts about me and about us. But I want you to know that I'm willing to wait. I won't pressure you. I'll stay by your side for as long as you need. Alice didn't say anything. Touched by how honest he was being, finally. She replied, "Thank you, Victor. I really appreciate that." As he walked away, Alice realized she might be starting to trust him, but would trust be enough to open her heart again? The connection between Alice, Luna, Victor continued to grow stronger. Despite her, Alice didn't say anything. She was touched by how honest he was being. Finally, she replied, "Thank you, Victor. I really appreciate that." As he walked away, Alice realized she might be starting to trust him. But would trust be enough to open her heart again? The bond between Alice, Luna, Victor continued to grow stronger. Despite her reservations, Alice began to see something in Victor that she hadn't seen in a long time: stability. He was there, present. Not just to help her, to build something genuine with her and Luna. A shadow from her past lingered. She knew she'd need to confront it before moving forward. One quiet morning at the office. Reservations. Alice had noticed something in Victor that she hadn't seen in a long time. Stability. He was there for her. Not just to help. To build something genuine with her and Luna. Yet, a shadow from her past lingered. She knew she'd need to confront it before moving forward. One quiet morning at the office, while Alice was reviewing reports, Lucas walked into Victor's office with a concerned expression. He carried an envelope in his hand and placed it on the desk. "Sir, this just arrived. It's about Alice." Victor carefully picked up the envelope and began reading. His face shifted from surprise to worry. The document was from a lawyer representing Luna's biological father. He had resurfaced, demanding visitation rights. "Is this serious?" Victor asked, looking at Lucas. "Very. It seems he's ready to take the case to court if necessary," Lucas replied. Victor knew this could destroy the progress Alice had made. More than that, he feared the impact it would have on Luna. By the end of the day, Victor decided to talk to Alice. He waited until everyone had left the office and went to her desk. "Alice, can we talk?" he asked, his tone more serious than usual. She nodded, curious about his expression. When they reached his office, Victor closed the door and handed her the envelope. Alice read the document, her face turning pale. "He can't do this," she murmured, her voice shaking. "Alice, I don't know all the details. I want to help. If you need a lawyer, someone to fight alongside you, I'm here," Victor said, trying to comfort her. Alice placed the paper on the desk. Taking a deep breath, he left. When Alice learned something new about Victor. She hadn't seen this side of him in a long time. He was there for her and Luna. He wanted to build a genuine relationship with them. But there was a problem from her past. She knew she had to deal with it before she could move forward. One quiet morning at the office, Alice found out she was pregnant. Victor said he didn't want anything to do with her. Years later, he thinks he can just show up and claim something. It's unfair. Victor. Alice knew he wasn't alone in this. She would fight this with him, Victor assured her. Alice looked at him. She was touched by the determination in his voice. A part of her still reservations. Alice noticed something different about Victor. He was there to help her and Luna. Not just to help her. She knew she'd need to deal with something from her past before they could move forward. Hesitated. One quiet morning at the office. Victor said, "I appreciate it. This is something I need to handle on my own. I don't want Luna to think I rely on others to protect her." He nodded. Respecting her decision. "I understand. Know that if you change your mind, I'm here." In the days that followed, Alice threw herself into the legal battle between meetings with lawyers and searching for old documents. She barely had time to focus on work. Victor noticed the toll it was taking on her. He refrained from interfering, hoping she'd come to him if she needed help. At home, Luna also sensed that something was different. One night, as Alice was organizing papers in the kitchen table, Luna approached her with her teddy bear. "Mommy, are you sad?" she asked, innocently wanting to help. Alice stopped and hugged her daughter, holding back tears. "No, sweetheart. I'm just tired. Everything will be okay. I promise." Luna hugged her teddy bear tightly and said, "Mr. Victor can help. He's really strong." Alice smiled but didn't respond. Could Victor really help, and more importantly, would she let him? The following week, the situation got worse. Luna's father sent a formal notice to start the process for shared custody. Alice felt like the ground was falling out from under her. Her biggest concern was Luna's well-being. She knew her daughter's biological father didn't have a good reputation. She was afraid he'd use her financial struggles against her. When Victor heard the news, he had to take action. That evening, he went to Alice's apartment. He wanted to convince her to accept his help. "Alice, I understand you want to handle this on your own. This isn't just about you. It's about Luna. I know you'd do anything for her. Even accept help from someone like me." He couldn't stay on the sidelines any longer. That evening, he went to Alice's apartment. He was determined to convince her to accept his help. "Alice, I understand you want to handle this on your own. This isn't just about you. It's about Luna. I know you'd do anything for her. Even accept help from someone like me." He said this with a soft smile. Alice sighed, battling her pride. She knew he was right. "Victor, I'm so afraid this will end up hurting Luna. I don't want her to feel like her life can be divided like an object," she confessed. "And that's why you won't face this alone. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere," he assured her. Finally, Alice agreed to let Victor help her. Together, they hired a well-known lawyer and started collecting evidence to counter the biological father's claim. Victor also used his resources to investigate the man, finding information that could be used in court. On the day of the hearing, Alice was nervous. Victor was by her side, holding her hand as they waited outside the courtroom. When the case was called, Alice walked in with her head held high, determined to protect her daughter. During the hearing, Victor's lawyer presented compelling evidence that Luna's biological father had never shown interest in caring for her before and that his current intentions seemed more financially motivated than focused on her well-being. Being Alice also meant that she had to give emotional testimony. She explained how she had fought to raise Luna on her own. She said that she had never let Luna lack love or care. In the end, the judge ruled in Alice's favor. The judge said that the biological father could not visit. When the verdict was announced, Alice felt a weight lift off her shoulders. She looked at Victor, who smiled back proudly. That night, back at the apartment, Alice finally allowed herself to relax. She watched Victor play with Luna in the living room. There was a new feeling in the room. The first time, There was no fear or mistrust. There was only gratitude. A growing feeling that he was becoming part of the family. After Luna went to bed, Alice called Victor out to the balcony. It was a cool night. The stars shone brightly in the sky. "Victor, I don't know how to thank you for everything you've done for us," she said, her voice breaking. He took her hands and looked directly into her eyes. "You don't need to thank me, Alice. Everything I did was to help you," he said. "I care about you and Luna. They mean more to me than I can express." Alice felt tears roll down her cheeks. She didn't say a word. She stepped forward and hugged him. This allowed her to finally trust him. The days following the court victory brought a calm to Alice. She hadn't felt this calm in a long time. She knew there were still challenges ahead. For the first time in years, she felt she wasn't facing everything alone. Luna was safe. Victor had become a constant presence in her life. She was present not just in her life, in her daughter's heart as well. Despite this, Alice wasn't ready to take everything for granted. She knew that opening her heart was a slow process. Even with Victor by her side, there was a lingering fear she needed to overcome. One Saturday morning, Victor showed up at her apartment with an unexpected proposal. "Alice, how about we spend the day out? Just the three of us. Somewhere peaceful. No work. No worries," he suggested. Alice hesitated for a moment. Even though she trusted him more, she was still getting used to the idea of including him in her family's daily life. Before she could answer, Luna ran to the door, holding her teddy bear. "Let's go, Mom. Please," the little girl said, her eyes shining with excitement. Alice laughed and agreed. "All right. Nothing too fancy." "Okay." Victor smiled, raising his hands in pretend surrender. "I promise." The outing took them to a small farm on the edge of the city with open fields, fruit trees. The animals that immediately charmed Luna. Victor seemed to have thought of everything. They brought snacks and even a small picnic basket to Alice. To her, it was a gesture more meaningful than any expensive gift. While Luna chased chickens, Victor and Alice sat under a tree, watching her play. The moment seemed almost surreal to Alice, who had believed for so long that there was no room for simplicity or joy in her life. "It's nice to see you relax a bit," Victor commented, breaking the silence. "Alice?" I looked at him with a shy smile. "I haven't done that in years. It was always just Luna and me trying to get by." Victor leaned in slightly, his expression serious. "You don't have to carry everything alone anymore, Alice. I want to be here for you. Both of you. I want you to know that won't change." His words touched her deeply. She was still afraid to fully let go. "I believe you, Victor. I need you to understand that this is new for me. It's not easy to trust that someone won't just disappear," she said, sincerely. Victor nodded. "I know. I don't expect you to change that overnight. I just want you to know that I'm willing to wait as long as it takes." As the sun began to set, they gathered the picnic things and headed back to the car. Luna, exhausted from playing all day, fell asleep in the back seat, clutching her teddy bear. On the drive home, Alice sat in silence, gazing out the window. Try as she might, Victor's gestures were slowly breaking down the walls. She had spent years building it, When they arrived at the apartment, Victor helped carry Luna to her room. He carefully placed her in bed and tucked her in with a blanket. As he left the room, he found Alice waiting for him in the living room. "Thank you for today," she said softly. "There's no need to thank me. I'd do it," Victor replied. Over time, she had built up a strong connection with him. When they arrived at the apartment, Victor helped carry Luna to her room. He carefully placed her in bed and tucked her in with a blanket. As he left the room, he found Alice waiting for him in the living room. "Thank you for today," she said softly. "You're welcome," he replied. "I'd do it every day if I could." Alice felt a wave of emotion. Before she could say anything, Victor stepped closer. A moment. They stood in silence, their eyes speaking more than words ever could. Finally, Alice broke the stillness. "I want to try," she said. "I want to try to trust. I need you to be patient with me." "I'll be," Victor replied. "Every day," Victor replied. Alice felt a wave of emotion. Before she could say anything, Victor stepped closer. A moment. They stood in silence, their eyes speaking more than words ever could. Finally, Alice broke the stillness. "I want to try," she said. "I want to try to trust. I need you to be patient with me." Victor smiled, taking her hands in his. "Always," he said. Before Alice could respond, he leaned in slowly, making it clear he would give her the chance to pull away. She didn't. Instead, she closed her eyes and let him kiss her. It was a gentle kiss, filled with meaning that no words could convey. Alice felt her heart race. At the same time, he smiled and took her hands. "Always," he said. Before Alice could respond, he leaned in slowly, making it clear he would give her the chance to pull away. But she didn't. Instead, she closed her eyes and let him kiss her. It was a gentle kiss, filled with meaning that no words could convey. Alice felt her heart race. At the same time, she felt calm. When they pulled apart, Victor's eyes remained fixed on hers. "I've been waiting for this," he murmured, still holding her hands. Alice smiled shyly. She felt warmth spreading through her that she hadn't felt in years. "I think I was waiting too," she said. "I just didn't realize it." Victor chuckled softly, bringing a hand to her face and gently brushing her cheek. "Alice, you and Luna are everything I want. I'll never let you down." She nodded, feeling for the first time that her walls were truly beginning to crumble. In the days that followed, the relationship between Alice and Victor began to shift. It wasn't just about help or friendship anymore. It was something deeper, more meaningful, that he started spending more time with them, creating moments Luna cherished slowly. Alice realized she didn't have to carry all the weight alone. One evening, as they were having dinner together, Luna looked at Victor with a mischievous smile. "Are you going to be my daddy?" Alice choked on her water, surprised by the sudden question. Victor laughed, his eyes full of love. "Well, that depends on your mom," he said playfully. Luna turned to Alice, eager for an answer. Alice blushed but laughed at the situation. "Let's take it slow, sweetie," she said, trying to hide her emotions. The following week, Victor planned a special dinner. He invited Alice and Luna to his home. which Alice hesitated to accept at first because she had never seen where he lived and feared the contrast between their lives might become too stark. Eventually, she agreed, realizing it was time to let go of that fear. When they arrived at Victor's house, she was surprised. The place was big and fancy. It felt warm and personal. There were photos from his travels, books everywhere. Even a nice kitchen where Victor impressed Luna by flipping pancakes. People don't expect a CEO to do that. "I enjoy cooking," he said. Flipping a pancake in the air, Luna clapped excitedly. Alice couldn't help but smile. The simple gesture made her realize that, despite his wealth and status, Victor was genuine. He wasn't trying to be someone else. After dinner, while Luna played in the living room, Victor asked Alice to join him on the balcony. The cool night air brought a sense of calm as they looked out over the city lights. "Alice, there's something I want to ask you," he began, turning to face her. She looked at him curiously. "What is it?" Victor took a deep breath and pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. Alice's eyes widened, her heart pounding. "I know this might seem fast. Everything I've experienced with you and Luna has shown me what truly matters. That I want to be by your side. Alice, that I want to build a life with you and Luna." He opened the box, revealing a simple yet elegant ring. "Alice Marrera, will you marry me?" For a few seconds, Alice was speechless. Tears streamed down her face. Finally, she smiled and nodded, face to face, gently brushing her cheek. Alice said, "You and Luna are everything I want. I'll never let you down." She nodded, feeling for the first time that her walls were truly beginning to crumble. In the days that followed, the relationship between Alice and Victor began to shift. It wasn't just about help or friendship anymore. "Yes, Victor. Yes, I will." Victor slipped the ring onto her finger. They embraced as emotions overflowed. Hearing the celebration, Luna ran over to them. "Are you getting married?" she asked excitedly. Alice laughed, lifting her daughter into her arms. "Yes, my love. We're going to be a family." Victor wrapped his arms around both of them. Alice felt more complete than she ever thought possible. Her life changed completely in the weeks following the engagement. Though her routine with Luna and her work at Victor's company remained intense, something had shifted inside her. She felt hopeful for the first time in years. Victor was more present than ever. They helped each other plan the details of their future together. One sunny weekend, Victor organized a lunch at his home to celebrate the engagement with close friends and some company employees. Alice was nervous. She didn't like being the center of attention and feared people might judge her for her humble background. However, Victor made sure the event was relaxed and welcoming. Luna was the star of the lunch, running around and charming the guests with her energy. Alice watched her daughter play, the smile on her face reflecting this new chapter in her life. "Are you okay?" Victor asked, approaching with 2 glasses of juice. He handed one to her. Alice looked worried, nodded her head yes. She let out a deep breath. "I keep wondering if I really deserve all this. It feels like a dream." "Dreams don't always last," Victor said, setting his glass down on the table and taking her hands. "Alice, you deserve more than this. You deserve to be happy without reservations or fears. I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving that to you." Alice smiled, touched by his words. Before she could respond, Luna ran over, holding a bouquet of flowers she'd picked from the garden. Mommy. Look what I made. Luna said, extending the bouquet to Alice. Alice took the flowers and kissed her daughter on the forehead. They're beautiful. My love. Thank you. Victor crouched down to Luna's level. Those flowers are for Mommy. I think I need to steal her for a few minutes. Can I? Luna giggled and nodded. Only if you take me to get them. Those flowers are for Mommy. I think I need to steal her for a few minutes. Can I? Only if you take me to get ice cream afterward. Deal. Victor replied, laughing. He led Alice to a quieter corner of the garden under a tree. I know this is new for you, Alice. I know it won't be easy to get used to. I want you to know I'm here. Always. He looked directly into her eyes. Alice took a deep breath, allowing herself to relax for the first time that day. Thank you, Victor. Everything. Believing in me. Even when I didn't. Victor smiled and kissed her again. This gesture seemed to seal everything they had promised each other. As the weeks passed, the wedding preparations began to take shape. Alice wanted something simple, while Victor insisted she deserved something special. In the end, they reached a compromise, an intimate ceremony in an open field with flowers and soft lights. By the people who truly mattered. However, the journey to the wedding was not without challenges. Alice still had to deal with insecurities that arose from time to time. One day, while organizing documents at work, she found an old photo of Luna's father hidden in a drawer. Looking at the man's face in the photo brought back memories that Alice preferred to forget. When Victor arrived that night, he found Alice quiet, looking out the window with the photo in her hands. He approached her slowly, concerned. What happened? He asked. Sitting next to her, Alice showed him the photo. Teary. Sometimes I wonder if I'm doing the right thing. If I'm building something Luna will remember as good. If somehow all of this goes wrong. Victor took the photo and looked at it for a moment before setting it aside. Alice. Everything you've done so far has been for Luna. Everything we're building is for her. 2. Don't let the past hold you back. It doesn't define who you are. What you can achieve. Alice looked at him, feeling a new wave of gratitude. Thank you, Victor. I don't know how I managed to live so long without someone like you. Victor, he laughed softly and held her face in his hands. Maybe you were just waiting for the right person. Finally, the big day arrived. The field was decorated with wildflowers. A light breeze swayed the white curtains surrounding the altar. Alice wore a simple yet elegant dress that seemed made for her. Luna, dressed as a little bridesmaid, was radiant. Victor waited at the altar, nervous but with an uncontrollable smile. When Alice began to walk toward him, all the sounds around seemed to fade away. Him. Only that moment existed. That love they had built together. They got to the altar. The official started the ceremony. Instead of the words he had practiced, Victor decided to speak from the heart. Alice. You've changed my life in ways I never thought possible. You've taught me what it means to fight and what it means to love unconditionally. Today, I promise to stand by your side every day, building a life full of love and joy for you and Luna. Alice couldn't hold back her tears. When it was her turn to speak, her voice trembled. It was steady. Victor. You came into my life when I least expected it. Exactly when I needed it the most. You helped me trust again. You gave me hope. Today I promise to be your partner. Your friend. Your family. When the judge said they were married, Luna ran over and gave them a big hug, interrupting their kiss. Now we're a real family, she said, making everyone laugh. Victor and Alice embraced Luna, feeling that they had finally found what they had always been searching for: love, security, a promising future. What do you think about Victor's actions? Share your thoughts in the comments. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What's your score? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell to stay updated on all our stories. Take a moment to check out more heartwarming stories by clicking here on the end screen.